Here we go. Let me start by asking you a question. In your career, when have you been the happiest? When have you felt that all your skills and your strength and your talent has been fully utilized and you've been working with people that you really connect with and you're doing something that you really love? Try to think of those moments. But more importantly, try to think of what made that special moment. What had made you feel like that? If you're like me, probably you were engaged in something that you were very passionate about and you were fully utilizing your skills and your talents and you were doing something that you love, but you were doing it with people that believe the same that you believe. And it's probably something that created a lot of energy and flow in you. That certainly was the case for me. I'm an entrepreneur. I have built some businesses, but I also have had some significant failures. But before I was a full-time entrepreneur, I was a business consultant for a long time. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I sat down one day with a friend and I said, could you please help me to change my CV? I want to work on my resume. I want to make a career change. And he said, okay, let's start from there. And he said, let's look back on your life and let's try to identify when you've been the happiest. And he asked me to plot in a line all the jobs and activities that I ever had, going backwards from today all the way to when I was a kid. And then he asked me, let's put a score in every single one of them in terms of how happy, how fulfilled, and even how financially rewarded were you. And surprise, surprise, something quite unpredictable happens. I started to realize that I've been the happiest and the most fulfilled in the jobs that actually I wanted to hide in my resume. Because were the jobs that were not the professional companies, the very prestigious global organizations, is when I was working in a fast food franchise or when I was involved in a charity or in a non-for-profit organization that I was passionate about. And so this is quite astonishing discovery. And he asked me, why do you think that is? And ever since I started to really question that, and I make a discovery that I want to share with you all today, that it was entrepreneurial principles that took place in those experiences. And I discovered that entrepreneurship was actually a doorway for my creative expression for happiness and fulfillment. You see, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I always thought entrepreneurs were very unique people, a rare breed, a special club. They have these special traits. They come up with original ideas that nobody thought of before. They built businesses from scratch and they went through an awful amount of risk to build them. I never thought of myself like one of those. I always thought of maybe Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. They're entrepreneurs, not me. But when I actually went and looked at the meaning of the word entrepreneur, I realized that the origin of the word entrepreneur comes from a word adventure. Entrepreneurs were adventurers. It was used centuries ago to refer to people who will go into an adventure, to the sailors that will set sail in the search of a new land, not knowing what they will find and not knowing if they will succeed. Entrepreneurs later were coined in 1755 by Richard Cotillon as risk takers. It was the first time the term entrepreneur was actually coined in literature. And he defined entrepreneurs as risk takers. But more recently, in the last 100 years, somebody came and said, entrepreneurs are actually wild spirits. People who go in an adventure. And when we look at the definition of the word entrepreneurs, we realize it's not a business practice. It's actually a philosophy. It's a way of being. So if you don't consider yourself an entrepreneur, then think again. Because it's all about being a wild spirit. It's all about pursuing those adventures and those passions that we have. I concluded that entrepreneurs are people who can build something, not necessarily a business or a project or a product, but people who build a story, people who build a passion, an experience, and a dream. Now you might wonder, what entrepreneurs do that make them so special? What is it they practice? What is it that they believe? And what's the mindset? So let me take you through that. The first thing that entrepreneurs do is to say yes to something they believe in, to a passion, to something that they care. You see, most of us have a lot of passions and dreams and things that we want to do. A lot of us have a lot of ideas, but not all of us actually act on those ideas. Entrepreneurs say yes with a strong passion, and they open a door to pursue that passion. They act on it. They're not passive observers of life. They know that things will only change when actually they take part and become co-creators of that reality. And while they do that, they might actually go and face a lot of risk, but they are not scared of taking risks. They jump and they say, yes, I want to take that risk. They understand that it's not that they don't feel scared about taking risks, but it's about they take it anyway. And they understand that failure is just part of the process and it's not a permanent state. They know that from failure we can learn and we continue to progress when we even fall down. The other thing that entrepreneurs do is they also start walking even though they might not have a path. They embrace uncertainty, they walk into the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen, but they really rely and trust in their own ability to sort it out, to work it out. They know that there is not a path, but the path is made by walking. And while they build that path, they also start building bridges. They realize that the path might have a gap, but they start building that bridge. And that bridge can be also building relationships and working with people that think like them. So these are one of the key things of an entrepreneurial mindset. But not only that, they also take action in two fronts. The first thing that they do is that they start getting involved in something. They either get involved in a passion, in an organization that they believe in a social movement, or they start something up. It's about actually saying yes, and I say, I want to go and take part of this, and I want to create something different. So, what is it then entrepreneurship principles are? And how does that make me happy? Why entrepreneur principles lead to happiness? Most people are probably not much happier and fulfilled in their life because they're probably doing jobs they don't fully enjoy. They're probably working with people that they not necessarily connect with. And maybe working with products and services that they can relate to. Or even if they enjoy the jobs that they have, then they're not fully utilizing all the talents or the skills and unleashing the full creativity that they have. And that doesn't make them feel necessarily highly fulfilled. They're probably a cog in a bigger machine. Our society put us into boxes, and that makes our jobs very repetitive and lack of excitement. Entrepreneurs actually do twice the opposite. They start building their own organizations, they start building their ideas, and they bring their own color into it. So what is the entrepreneurs do that makes them so happy? So, the first thing is that the life of entrepreneurs are actually highly, highly exciting because they face a different day every day that brings a lot of excitement into their lives. And when we do that, they're constantly also engaging their creativity. When entrepreneurs start working towards something, there is something very interesting that happens. And it's a very strong sense of connection and belonging. Because normally, entrepreneurs connect with people that believe the same that they believe, and they have the same passion. And that creates a special bond, and it gives us a strong sense of connection and belonging. That is part of what gives us happiness. Following a passion, following something that we really believe, not only gives us excitement and a different day every day, but also ignite us with passion and power. What else entrepreneurs do? Well, they have a strong sense of purpose. It is some of us who sometimes are wondering what my purpose in life is. Sometimes entrepreneurs discover their purpose by doing something. When they get engaged into something that they're really passionate about, what happens is they start to feel that they are of service to somebody. They're of service to society, to the world, to the people around them. And it gives a strong sense of meaning to our lives. So, having sense of purpose is another key thing that entrepreneurship gives us. And what happens with entrepreneurs is that we're not limited to a box, to a constraint of skills or activities that we do. When we start embracing a new adventure, Then we engage all our skills. We unleash our creativity, all our abilities in marketing, in finance, in social movement, in influencing people, in managing people. We start bringing our entire self into work or into what we do. We're not limited. And we start really creating a lot of different ideas and movements with that. Not only that, but when we face a struggle, when we face setbacks, what happens is we also start to learn because we really care. We really want to sort it out. We come up with solutions, and that means that our skills are constantly developing. So entrepreneurs not only are engaged fully in what they're doing, but they're also constantly learning and constantly developing. But more important of all is I believe that entrepreneurship unleashes our creativity. I never really thought of myself as somebody creative. I thought creativity is for artists, musicians, painters, and dancers, and artists. But actually, I discovered with my life that I became highly creative when I was working in things that I was passionate about, where all my skills were allowing me to connect the dots. And that's when I feel really, really, really creative. I never experienced that before. So, can you imagine? All of these together is what I define as fulfillment and happiness. Can you imagine that you could experience all these feelings all at once in an ongoing basis? Well, this is what entrepreneur principles give to our lives. And by that, I'm not saying that I'm inviting you to start a project, a business, or become an entrepreneur. I believe that these are principles that we can apply in our personal lives, and it will make a significant difference in them. Can you imagine what your life will be like if you wake up every morning feeling like this, working towards something that you believe and that really ignites you with passion and power? More importantly, can you imagine what your society and community will be like if everyone in them wake up every morning feeling like this? I truly believe we will be living in a completely different world. But what do I mean by going on an adventure? What do I mean by being an entrepreneur in our own lives? Well, we said entrepreneurs get involved with things or start things up. Okay, so what sort of things I'm referring to exactly? These are adventures that we can all take part on. It's not necessarily starting up a business. It's about being part of a charity that we care for or that we believe in. It's starting a social movement. It's joining an interest group or something that we're passionate about. It's even pursuing our hobbies. Those hobbies that you know that you have and you want to pursue, but you are doing nothing about those, that is entrepreneurial. When we are also joining maybe a startup or an organization of a friend, somebody else that has a project, you don't have to come up with the idea. You don't have to build a business from scratch. You can be joining somebody else on that journey too. Oh yes, you can build your own business. All of these are vehicles or what I call adventures. When we start getting involved in one of those, we become entrepreneurials. So if you never thought of yourself as an entrepreneur, think again, because this is a way of actually being entrepreneurs at heart. This is about being wild spirits, risk takers, and going in adventures. This is how we create stories, make dreams come true, and create experiences. Now, I've been involved in a lot of businesses and entrepreneurial activities since I was a kid. I became the president of the school newspaper when I was in school. I got involved in a lot of organizations as I grew up, and at university I took part in non-profits and social movements, and I've always got a lot of development and a lot of excitement and passion out of those things. And yes, later on I built some businesses, and now I help other entrepreneurs to build theirs. And it's something that I love because I connect with their mindset and I connect with their energy that they also experience them themselves. And what happens when we're doing all of these things is that we're so engaged in what we do that the passion just pours out of us. And our body's constantly releasing the happiness hormones. We're constantly releasing these endorphins of dopamine and serotonin. And that's creating happiness in our bodies. Emotions are not other than a chemical reaction. That's what happens into our brain. When we have these aha moments, when we're really cracking a problem, when we're coming up with a solution, this ignites our passion. And this is what entrepreneurship does to us. Now, you might wonder, well, okay, that's great. I can become an entrepreneur by getting involved in something social or in a passion or in a hobby. But I can also be an entrepreneur by starting a business or starting a movement. Great. But how can I apply entrepreneurship principles into my very inner personal life? I grew up in Venezuela, and I didn't have the happiest of childhoods. When I was 9, I was involved in a car crash, and my mother pretty much passed away in my hands. And I thought that was bad enough to wake me up to life and to create a lot of trauma in me. But little did I know that was just the beginning. I was destined to have a rather difficult childhood, full of struggle and suffering. I had a very difficult relationship with my father. Later, a very difficult relationship with my grandfather. And my life growing up was full of struggle and difficulties. That, of course, is not the purpose of the talk. But the point I want to make is that when I became my early 20s, I started to realize that I wanted a change. I wanted to be in charge of my own life, and I wanted to create a different reality for myself. So I decided to leave home, and I packed my bags, and I moved to England. And I arrived in England 13 years ago with 300 pounds in my pocket. I spoke hardly any English, and I didn't know anybody. I said yes to an idea. I acted on my idea. I took a risk even though I have no guarantees of success. I trusted my own ability to sort it out and work it out as I walk along. I built bridges and I built relationships. And I have to do jobs that I didn't like. I ended up washing up and cutting vegetables in the back of a restaurant. But I poured my heart and my mind into it because I knew it was a stepping stone for my next step. I knew I was building a dream. And surprisingly, that was actually what led to me setting up my first restaurant a year and a half later. Now, I have the pleasure to employ 200 people just because of that. The business has been growing, and that entrepreneurial spirit has been key in me. The last 13 years of my life have been a wild spirit, but has been the most rewarding years of my life when I have been full of happiness and passion, when I only have created happiness and passion for myself, but all those around me and society at large. I believe that we can create that for ourselves as well. The challenges we have in life are the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And to close a gap, we cannot close it by just observing what's happening, by just believing in the law of attraction or just creating visual boards that we're going to stick back up on our walls. We have to take actions. We have to say yes to change the things. We have to say yes to pursue what we believe in. And we have to be entrepreneurs of our own life, embracing those principles and realizing that we only close that gap by achieving and moving forward. My invitation to all of us is to jump on the driving seat of our own life by being entrepreneurial. I believe entrepreneur is a value, it's a mindset, and it's a way of living. It's about creating stories and about creating dreams. We might not determine where we are, what happened to us, but we have a choice to do something what we got, and that's being an entrepreneur. I want to close by leaving you with a quote that have resonated for me for a long time. A ship in a harbor is safe, but that is not what ships were built for. Equally, we are safe in our comfort zones, but that's what we're fault. We are built to create. We're built to go in an adventure of our passions and our dreams. And that's we can do by being entrepreneurs in our own lives. Thank you.